Good evening, and welcome to my podcast 2.0 Video Edition. I'm your host, Broadcast Shayon, and tonight we're going to be exploring the past, present, and future of weather forecasting technology. Now, I'm just a humble meteorologist, which means the classes in college that I took were about as dense as the hair in my new quarantine mustaches. So to help us explain this video, we have a few guests joining us tonight. Our first guest is technology expert, computer science Shayon.
Hey guys, I'm computer science Shayon. I like coding and I like writing programs, and I like programming.
Hey, I bet your life before and after the quarantine was exactly the same.
I mean, he's not wrong. I could get out more.
You just saw history buff Shayon, our next guest, and an expert in his respective field. He also requested that I make sure that you guys know that he is so funny that he can break through the fourth wall. Whatever that means. His wardrobe tonight includes a shirt that he said, quote, is just enough between yellow and green to mess with our studio's editor in order to make it look like he was some punk college kid making a video for the first time on his mom's 2008 MacBook Air. Here he is. What's up? I'm History Buff Shayon. I'm only here because I need to name this class. You know what to do, Nicole. I have no idea what he's talking about. But let's talk about weather forecasting for a change. It's one of the few things that I actually remembered from college. Weather forecasting is the practice of using science and technology to predict the atmospheric conditions for a specific area and time. Forecasts are produced by collecting large amounts of data about the surrounding atmosphere of a singular location and applying meteorology to predict how the atmosphere will change in the future. Weather forecasting is critical for protecting life and property. Predictions are also important for agriculture, business, planning outdoor activities, and deciding just what to wear for the day. Humanity has tried to forecast the weather correctly for thousands of years, but accurate predictions are extremely challenging. Large amounts of data and time are needed to create predictions, and weather events are extremely complicated. But no matter how advanced weather models or observational networks are, meteorologists always make forecasting errors. It's true. I make errors all the time. I have no idea how I still have this job, but I guess it's because I'm pretty. Up next, we have the world's worst history teacher live from his classroom. Take it away, History Buff Shayon. Good morning, class. Please, guys, save the questions for the end of the lecture. Oh, and sorry about the sunglasses again. Pabs was a blur last night. Okay, today we're going to be talking about the history of weather forecasting. The act of forecasting the weather began when early civilizations began to use meteorological events as indications for the seasonal changes in the weather. A little after 650 BC, the Babylonians used the appearance of clouds, halos, and other events to predict short-term weather changes. But by around 300 BC, several Chinese astronomers created a calendar of 24 festivals to divide the year into. The Greek philosopher Aristotle wrote Meteorologica around 350 BC. This writing featured several theories about how rain, clouds, and other events formed. Surprisingly, he made some remarkably accurate observations. He also made many significant errors, but his manuscript was considered to be the basis of weather theory for almost 2,000 years, and it was not until the 17th century that philosophers began to disregard his theories. By the end of the Renaissance, natural philosophers designed specialized instruments in order to measure the properties of the atmosphere. These included moisture, temperature, and pressure. Please, guys, save your questions for the end. Put your hands down. The hygrometer, developed by Nicola Cusa in the 15th century, was the first known design. It measured the humidity of the air, and Galileo later created an early thermometer in 1592, followed by Torricelli, who invented the barometer in 1643. As these instruments evolved, other developments also contributed to the general understanding of the atmosphere. Individuals across the world observed atmospheric measurements, and the invention of the telegraph allowed people to routinely transmit weather observations. Early weather maps were created using these networks in order to identify surface wind patterns and storm systems. Weather observing stations began appearing all over the globe and eventually spawning the birth of the synoptic weather forecasting. In the 1920s, the radiosonde allowed high-altitude weather observations. They were tiny, lightweight boxes carried high into the atmosphere by a balloon ascended to an altitude of 30 kilometers. Once it reached this point, it burst while carrying weather instruments and radio transmitters along the way and then dropping them to the ground. Huh? Huh? Oh. Oh my. Oh. Okay, all right. Our next guest is computer science Shayon, tech enthusiast, tech expert. Boy, I hope he's not as boring as the last guy was. He's coming to you live from his girlfriend's apartment. I'm just kidding. It's his mother's basement. Oh, don't you worry. I'm sure you'll find my info a little more punny than History Shayon, if you catch my drift. Today, scientists use a wide range of equipment to efficiently collect data and make better predictions. The first tool used by modern weather forecasters is the Doppler radar. Fun fact, did you know that the best radars come from Scandinavia? I didn't. The Doppler radar tracking system uses the Doppler effect to report the location and velocity of storms, clouds, and other events. It can also indicate wind speed and direction and the boundaries between warm and cold fronts. So make sure you check your local Doppler radar before breakfast. Gotcha. Satellites, weather buoys, drop zones, ships, airplanes, and weather stations are all also used to collect large quantities of weather data. Here's a fun fact. Did you know that only Americans call them buoys? They're actually called boys everywhere else. So I guess you could say that weather buoys are good boys. All right, so first up, we have satellites. Satellites take detailed images of the surface, and they monitor solar storms and space weather. Weather stations and buoys record weather data at specific locations around the world. Every day, 1,800 drop zones are launched into the sky, and they collect atmospheric measurements. You know, I actually got my degree in skydiving. I had to drop out to graduate, though. It was pretty weird. All right, and finally, ships and airplanes act as moving weather stations and record weather parameters as they change between locations. All of this observational data is fed into these huge supercomputer systems, and they're the backbone of modern forecasting. These systems are 6 million times more powerful than personal computers, and they use numerical forecast models, equations, and a large collection of weather data to generate weather predictions. It's actually quite fascinating. Now, broad scale factors such as air pressure, Earth's rotation, the water cycle, and even solar radiation can be used to generate regional forecasts instead of forecasts for just a single point. Advances like these help scientists realize that the hottest day of the week is actually Sunday. Back to you, Broadcast Shana. Well, that was interesting. As you can see, weather forecasting is a lot more complicated than most people think. It began thousands of years ago when humans simply looked to the sky and noticed things that changed every season. And from there, we invented instruments and networks and computers in order to perfect the art of collecting and analyzing the world around us. The more data scientists are able to collect, the more accurate the forecasts are going to be. And that's why today, the world is filled with satellites, airplanes, boats, and weather stations, all working together to become something more. One thing that everyone can agree on is that weather is critical for modern day society. Forecasts protect our crops, our businesses, and they also help us to know what to wear and when to pack an umbrella. However, one thing that scientists can't agree on is what the future of weather forecasting will look like. There is a leading theory, though, and it rhymes with artificial intelligence. It's artificial intelligence. But that's a topic for next week's episode. Thanks for watching.